Hi, quick video on how to get rid of a dust speck on the sensor of a Canon Power Shot SX240HS. As you see here. There is a dust speck that was right where everyone's face is pretty much in the picture, and it was driving everybody nuts. So pretty much the camera was no longer being used because, well, you keep getting a dust speck right in Grandma's face. And so I took it upon myself to take this camera apart and see what I can do about that, since the camera's, well, nobody's using it anyway, so we had nothing to lose. These are the tools that I used. Well, I guess first off, I don't endorse this from anybody, and if you break your camera, you are taking this on and you are responsible for what you do to your own cameras. This is not a tutorial on how to, this is just a what I did. In no particular steps, it's just basically took a bunch of pictures as I was taking it apart, and really for my own benefit, so I can remember where things went. I figured, what the heck, I'll throw it online, help somebody else out. Anyway, so I used a little bit of the dust off. I use that sparingly, and be careful you don't blow the screws off your paper towel. I used a paper towel where I would put my screws and parts down, and I would mark them with a black felt marker and lay them in order, what they were taken off. Plus I had the video, or the pictures I was taking. I used the needle nose pliers. Those were the best. The tweezers were too sharp and dangerous, actually. They could poke through a ribbon cable or whatever. Didn't work very well. Those needle nose pliers were great. I used Phillips, a little tiny one, fine one that fits your camera. I used the little flat screwdriver for breaking the glue on the sensor in the back once you get in there, and for prying it up a little bit. And then the swab, sensor swab, which I'll show later, I believe. I use it for my DSLRs. It works pretty good. It's not bad. Here I just laid the camera down and was going around the camera, just removing all the screws that I could see. Pretty easy. They're all the same type of screws. Come off pretty easy. Some were kind of hidden. Not really bad though. There's nothing up in the memory card area or anything like that. So, and once that was off, the back could come off quite easily, except for this ribbon cable. I initially tried to use the tweezers, but they didn't work so well. The needle nose pliers worked way better. Or if you had a flat tweezers, maybe. Those are too long and pointy. Once that was done, the back could come off quite easily. And yeah, I just tried to stay organized here. That silver thing is the LCD monitor bracket on the right hand side. It's removed, and I even circled the screws so I wouldn't lose them, but I still ended up with an extra one. You see the bracket's now off, the ribbon cable is off, and I'm going to start working on the front. Once the screws were off, this is actually a little snap-in fit on the top. It's kind of hung there, and I wasn't sure what was going on. I didn't want to force it. I couldn't find a screw anywhere, and it turned out it was just a little snap fit, as you can see here in this shot. And yeah, now the front's off, and that's all there was to that. So those three snap along the top there. Just remember that you just pull them out. I actually tried to go in through the front of the camera, thinking, well, you want to get to the CCD is probably the way to go. It was not. You don't have to take this stuff off. You probably have to take the front off in order to take the top off, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so I took that little heat shrink the cover off, and there's that spring on the right hand side there that I'm not sure had to come off or not. I can't remember now. But yeah, the ribbon cables and stuff had to come off. So, and I'm actually going from memory right now. I did this in February, and it's now October, so I'm a little tardy on my video for this. But those all those connectors there had to come off. They worked like one of them. I used a screwdriver on the big one just to see if that would, and I slipped and put a little dent into the ribbon cable. It was very took nothing to do it, so I'd be very, very careful with that. So anyway, yeah, the needle nose or the pliers, I had kind of a duckbill flat pliers, and I've kind of just got them from somewhere and inherited them, and they're pretty heavy duty, but they work great. And now I'm just kind of working at doing the screws and take that LCD screen off. That wasn't too tough, and now all the connectors have been unconnected or unplugged, and now I'm kind of working my way over the top. You see the top is off. That just basically following my nose really on this, and I had to take all the ribbon cables off in order to get the LCD off. And yeah, it's easy to take stuff apart, but try and put it back together again. So just by following my nose, this is where I ended up, and that was the tool of the trade right there. And that was the, like I say, I tried a screwdriver on one of them. I might be showing a screw there or something, but all those had to come off. All those ribbon cables, and it's pretty obvious where they go. And you know, they're all form fitted, and when you put the piece back on again, it's pretty obvious where they go back into. And now the LCD is off, and now you can see where the CCD goes in, and there's all the parts laying there, and trying to keep it, like say, in order, and keep it pretty well organized. Wasn't that tough actually putting it back together again, except for that oddball screw. And yeah, be careful with your compressed air, don't blow it anywhere near it. Yeah, so here's the back. It was glued in on each corner, but the screwdriver just broke that glue because it was really brittle, and I just put a little pressure on it, being very careful, of course, and it just snapped, like the glue just popped off, and it didn't really take too much to pop it out. And I'm thinking, I can't remember if all the screws were the same, but because I was taking them off in order along that paper towel, that wasn't too tough to keep track of. There, I'm just giving a little pop, and it came up real easy. Excuse me, I got a bit of a throat thing. Anyway, pop it off, and lo and behold, look at that gargantuan dust speck. You got to be very careful at this point too. You don't introduce any more dust into there. You know, it's kind of exposed right now, and there's a real good example of what that dust speck looked like. It's huge. And it's kind of weird too, as you turn this screen. I think because of the infrared filter still on there, it kind of showed in different color depending on how you looked at it and how you shone the light on it. So it's kind of cool how it turned and the light changed. Now, have to be careful because you're looking down inside. Don't get any where the shutter is. Don't get any dirt into there either. So to be very careful. I use these sensor swab I use for the DSLR cameras, and they work okay. When I brushed the edge of the infrared filter, though, the edges were kind of sharp and did pull the odd little hair of the sensor swab material off a little bit. I mean, it was really minute, but you don't want a hair in there, so one just had to be careful. But otherwise, this stuff worked pretty good. Kind of expensive, I suppose, to just buy it just for one camera, but I use it for my other cameras as well. And there's the infrared filter lying on a paper towel, and you can see it behind there, and I put on some plastic. And yeah, so once I cleaned it, putting it back in was an issue. It came off easy, but it wouldn't really stay on the CCD as I was trying to put it back in again. So I had to hold the camera kind of upside down with the infrared filter. It's just a tiny, tiny little piece of plastic, basically, super light. Try and balance it and put it in the right spot while I'm pushing it up into this little rubber thing where you see right by the shutter. And yeah, that took patience of a saint. It took a couple tries at that, and just couldn't force it. And you couldn't put the sensor in first and then put the other thing over top. And I don't know why, but it just wasn't working that way. But anyway, that was probably the hardest part about this whole thing, is just getting that back on again. And of course, try not to introduce any more dust while I'm fighting with it. But everything seemed to work out pretty good. So now I'm just putting everything back together, and like I say, it went pretty slick. Really nothing too tough, and all the ribbons and connectors are pretty obvious and where they go, and it doesn't take much to put them on. You can almost pull them off with your fingernail actually when you're unplugging them, but it was nice to have the you always see the dent on that ribbon cable. That came from a screwdriver where I thought I'd just drag the connector off, but I'd slipped and just touched it, and boom, there's a dent. Just shows how fragile those parts are. Yeah, so anyway, that's the only damage really that we got other than that screw. So yeah, putting it back together again here, and like I say, things were going along pretty tickety-boo. Have to remember to put the HDMI rubber door back on again. So there were some steps that you got to make sure you do it, you know, and there's the bracket for the LCD. You have to do it in certain steps going backwards. That's why it's so important to lay them out in a certain order. And there's the final, clear as a bell. Near that little speck at the bottom, I think that was actually on something else. So that actually wasn't on the sensor itself. So I don't think we have a problem with that. And yeah, I tested it, looked down the inside, tested all the components, all the different functions of the camera, and it worked fine. So that was a successful adventure, but I don't recommend it to the next person. But if you had to do it, well, that's what I did. So good luck.